Picture this. A young mother, mascara streaming down her face, bursts through hospital doors at 2:47 a.m. Her 7-week-old baby is burning with fever, possibly dying. She's called her husband 11 times, 11 desperate calls, but his phone is off because he's at a luxury hotel with another woman. What she doesn't know yet? He's been planning to take her baby away from her all along. This is the story of a woman who lost everything in one night and what she did to take it all back. Stay with me, because this ending, you won't see it coming. Rain hammered against the windows of Boston Memorial Hospital as grainy security footage flickered across a monitor in the administrative office. Timestamp, 2:47 in the morning. The black and white image showed a young woman bursting through the automatic emergency room doors, her body bent forward, stumbling on legs that barely held her weight. She clutched a bundle wrapped in a blue blanket against her chest, the fabric slightly too large, hastily grabbed. Nurses in scrubs rushed toward her from 3 different directions, their mouths open in shouts the silent footage couldn't capture. The woman collapsed against the reception while one hand slamming down on the counter to keep herself upright, the other still cradling the infant. Her hair hung in wet strings around her face. Mascara streaked down her cheeks in dark rivers. Her eyes were wild, the kind of terror that reaches into your chest and squeezes. The camera angle shifted. A close-up now, frozen mid-frame. You could see her mouth forming words, could see the desperate plea in every line of her face. The baby in her arms wasn't moving. Just a tiny form wrapped in hospital blankets. Too still, too quiet. The screen went black. White letters appeared, stark and clinical. 72 hours earlier. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows of a Beacon Hill brownstone on the kind of perfect August morning that made tourists think Boston was always this beautiful. The light caught on crystal vases, on polished hardwood floors, on the gilded frame of a wedding photo that showed a couple who looked genuinely happy. That photo was 3 years old now. The people in it didn't exist anymore. Not really. They'd been replaced by strangers who happened to share the same faces. Ryan Bennett stood before the hallway mirror, his movements practiced and precise. He adjusted his Hermes tie, a gift from a client who'd made $8 million off Ryan's investment advice. The tie cost $450. Ryan knew this because he'd looked it up, because knowing the value of things was how he measured his worth. At 38, he looked like he belonged in a hedge fund recruitment brochure. Sharp jawline that spoke of good genetics and better grooming, dark hair styled with product that cost $60 an ounce, just enough gray at the temples to suggest wisdom without age. His suit was Tom Ford, his shoes were Italian leather, and his Rolex Submariner caught the morning light like it was showing off. He looked successful, he looked powerful, he looked like a man who had everything. Behind him, visible in the mirror if he'd bothered to look, the living room told a different story. Claire Bennett sat hunched on their $8,000 leather couch, her body curved inward like she was trying to make herself smaller. She wore sweatpants from Target and an old college t-shirt with a milk stain across the front that had been there since yesterday, or maybe the day before. She couldn't remember anymore. The days blurred together in a haze of feeding schedules and diaper changes, an exhaustion so profound it felt like drowning. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the kind that no amount of concealer could hide. Her hair, once glossy and professionally highlighted every 6 weeks, was pulled into a knot so messy it looked like it might fall apart at any moment. She was 34 but looked a decade older in that moment, worn down by weeks of sleepless nights and the slowly dawning realization that she was doing this alone. Upstairs, their 7-week-old son, Owen, wailed with the insistent cry of an infant who knew no concept of mercy or convenience or his father's important business meeting. The sound cut through the expensive brownstone like a knife, bouncing off the high ceilings and custom crown molding, a reminder that all the money in the world couldn't buy a quiet baby. Ryan checked his Rolex for the 3rd time in 5 minutes. The movement was automatic, unconscious, the gesture of a man who measured his life in billable hours and market fluctuations. He cleared his throat, the sound sharp in the quiet room. Big pitch tonight with the Dubai investors. Might be late. Claire's laugh came out hollow and brittle, like glass breaking underwater. Ryan, it's our 5th anniversary. He was already scrolling through with his phone, thumb moving in that absent gesture that had become more familiar to her than his touch. His eyes never left the screen as he spoke. Babe, I know, we'll do something special this weekend. I promise. You said that about my birthday? Her voice was quiet, defeated, the tone of someone who'd stopped expecting to be heard. And Thanksgiving, and Christmas, and Valentine's Day. Ryan looked up from his phone, irritation flickering across his features before he smoothed it away. Claire, come on. You know how important this deal is. We're talking about $100 million fund. This could set us up for life. We're already set up for life, Claire said softly. We have a $3 million brownstone. You made $2.7 million last year. How much more do we need? Ryan moved to the couch and kissed her forehead without really looking at her, the way you'd pat a dog without breaking stride. His lips barely touched her skin. This deal closes we're set for real. Not just comfortable. We're talking private jets, vacation homes. Fuck you money. He grabbed his briefcase, the leather one that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Love you, the words came automatically, meaningless as a sneeze, empty as a promise he'd already broken 1,000 times. The door closed behind him with a heavy thud that seemed to suck the warmth from the room, leaving behind only expensive furniture and the echo of a baby crying upstairs and a woman sitting alone in a house that had stopped feeling like a home. Claire sat in the silence for a long moment, listening to Owen's cries reach a fever pitch. She could tell by the sound that he was working himself into one of his episodes, the kind where he'd scream for hours and nothing would comfort him. She should go to him. She knew she should go to him, but for just one moment, she let herself sit in the quiet of the living room and feel the weight of her loneliness. Tears slid down her cheeks, and she didn't have the energy to wipe them away. When had she become this person? This exhausted shell who sat crying on an expensive couch while her baby screamed upstairs. She used to be strong. She used to be a NICU nurse at one of the best hospitals in Boston. The person other nurses called when the really difficult cases came in. She'd saved lives. She'd held grieving parents while their babies died. She'd been competent and confident and capable. Now she couldn't remember the last time she'd showered. Now she cried over her husband forgetting their anniversary for the 4th year in a row. Now she was so tired she sometimes fell asleep sitting up, jerking awake in panic because she thought she'd dropped the baby. Owen's cries stopped abruptly, which was somehow worse than the noise. Claire forced herself to stand, her body moving through molasses, and climbed the stairs. Each step felt like a mountain. Her legs were weak. She couldn't remember if she'd eaten anything today. Maybe she'd had coffee. She thought she remembered coffee. The nursery was painted in soft shades of blue and cream, decorated with hand-painted murals of clouds and stars that had cost $3,000. Owen lay in his crib, a custom Italian design made of sustainable wood and non-toxic finishes. He'd fallen back asleep finally, his tiny fist curled near his face. So perfect, so innocent, so completely unaware that his father was a stranger who spent more time with his phone than with his family, and his mother was drowning in plain sight. Claire stood over the crib and watched her son breathe, counting each rise and fall of his tiny chest. This was what mattered, not the brownstone or Ryan's career or her shattered marriage. Just this small person who depended on her completely. She turned to head back downstairs and noticed Ryan's iPad on the hallway table. He'd forgotten it. Again. He was always forgetting things lately, his mind somewhere else, on deals and investments, and things that mattered more than his family. She picked it up, intending to take it to his office so he could grab it when he inevitably came back for it. The iPad vibrated in her hand. A text notification lit up the screen, bright and cheerful and completely oblivious to the fact that it was about to detonate a bomb in the middle of Claire's carefully maintained denial. A.S. Tonight is finally happening. I bought something special to wear. Or not wear. Claire's hands began to shake. The iPad felt suddenly heavy, dangerous, like holding a grenade with the pin pulled. Her brain tried to supply innocent explanations. A.S. could be anyone. Maybe a client. Maybe a colleague. Maybe someone Ryan worked with on the Dubai deal. The message could mean anything. But she knew. Deep in her gut, in that place where wives always know, even when they pretend not to, she knew exactly what this meant. Her finger hovered over the screen. Some part of her brain screamed not to look. That ignorance was survival. That knowledge was a cliff she couldn't unjump from. Once she knew for certain, she couldn't unknow it. Her marriage would be over. Not the slow death it had been dying for the past year, but actually over. Final. Irrevocable. But her finger moved anyway. Muscle memory overriding self-preservation. Unlocking the device with a soft chime that sounded obscenely cheerful. The password was 010825, their son's birthday. She'd watched Ryan enter it 100 times, had smiled at the gesture, back when she still believed in gestures, back when she thought a password meant something about priorities. The Messages app opened. AS was at the top of the list, above his mother, above his boss, above Claire herself. The preview of the conversation showed up in neat gray and blue bubbles, a digital record of every lie her husband had told. Claire's thumb moved on its own, scrolling up, watching months of deception load in reverse chronology. Her breath came short and sharp. Her vision tunneled. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of mistake. April 15th, 5 months ago, before Owen was born, when Claire had been 8 months pregnant and swollen and exhausted and trusting. AS. Well, when are you going to tell her about us? Ryan's response, in those familiar blue bubbles that Claire had seen 1,000 times, saying, I love you, and on my way home, and can you pick up milk? After the baby comes. She's too emotional right now. Doctors say pregnancy hormones make women unstable. Can't risk her doing something crazy. AS. You've been saying after the baby for 7 months. I'm starting to think you're never going to leave her. Ryan, I will. I promise. Once the kid is here and I can document how she's handling motherhood, it'll be easier. Trust me, baby. This is just strategic. Claire's breath stopped. The words blurred as tears filled her vision, but she kept scrolling, compelled by the same impulse that makes you look at a car crash, that makes you watch horror movies through your fingers. She had to know. She had to see all of it. May 22nd, 2 days after Owen's birth. Claire remembered that day with perfect clarity. She'd been in the hospital for 48 hours after an emergency C-section. Ryan had sat beside her bed the whole time, or so she'd thought. She remembered him stepping out to take calls, coming back with coffee, kissing her forehead and telling her she was amazing. She remembered wrong. Ryan had to stay at the hospital with Claire all night. Baby came early, emergency C-section. Whole thing was a nightmare. She's fine, baby's fine, but I'm exhausted. Talk tomorrow. Artebes. You're exhausted? I'm the one who spent our anniversary alone while you played devoted husband. When do I get to be your priority? Ryan, soon, I swear, you're my real life. She's just the obligation. Once I document how unstable she's been since the birth, custody will be easier. My lawyer says new mothers often have mental health issues. We just need to wait for her to crack a little. Then I'll have everything I need. Claire made a sound, something between a gasp and a sob. The iPad slipped from her numb fingers and clattered on the hardwood floor. She stood frozen, her mind trying to catch up with what her eyes had just shown her. This wasn't just an affair. This wasn't just a man making a mistake, giving in to temptation, having a moment of weakness. This was a plan, calculated, premeditated, cold. He'd been plotting to leave her, to take Owen, to paint her as an unstable mother who couldn't be trusted. He'd been weaponizing her exhaustion, her postpartum struggles, the normal difficulties of new motherhood. Building a case, gathering evidence. Her husband was trying to destroy her. How long had she been standing there? Seconds, minutes, hours? Time felt strange, elastic. Owen started crying again upstairs, pulling her back to reality. She bent and picked up the iPad with trembling hands. Her nursing training kicked in, the clinical part of her brain that had been trained to function during crises. Document everything. Evidence. You need evidence. She opened her phone camera and began photographing the messages. Her hands steadied as she worked, the shock crystallizing into something cold and clear, like ice forming on a winter lake. Every text, every sick manipulation, every calculated cruelty. The screenshots piled up in her camera roll, a digital record of betrayal. She found more. So much more than she'd expected. Messages from June, from July, from 2 weeks ago, conversations about their future together, Amber talking about apartments she'd been looking at, Ryan promising they'd go public once the divorce was finalized, discussions about how to make Claire look unstable, about documenting every time she cried, every time she struggled, every time she showed any sign that new motherhood was hard. There were photos too. Ryan and Amber at restaurants Claire had never been to. Ryan and Amber at his office Christmas party that Claire had skipped because Owen had been 2 weeks old. Ryan and Amber in hotel rooms, her wearing lingerie that cost more than Claire's nursing scrubs. One text from just last week, June 30th, stop Claire cold. Yes, aw. A.S. I love you. I want a real life with you. Not this half life where I'm your secret. Ryan, soon baby, trust me. She's barely holding it together as it is. Yesterday she cried because I asked her what was for dinner. She's losing it. Another month, maybe 2, and we'll have everything we need. Then you and me, baby. Real life. Our life. Claire's vision swam. She'd cried yesterday because she'd been awake for 36 hours straight, and Ryan had come home and immediately started complaining about the house being messy and asking what was for dinner, like she was a servant instead of his wife, who just spent 2 days straight keeping their infant son alive. She'd cried from exhaustion and frustration and the loneliness of being married to someone who saw her as an inconvenience instead of a partner. And he'd been documenting it, using it against her, building his case. When she finished photographing everything, she placed the iPad back exactly where she'd found it. Her hands weren't shaking anymore. The tears had stopped. Something had shifted inside her, some fundamental understanding of the world and her place in it and what she was capable of. She went upstairs to the nursery. Owen was crying again, his face red, his little fists waving. She picked him up and held him close, feeling his warmth, his weight, his complete dependence on her. He's not taking you from me, she whispered against Owen's soft hair. Her voice was steady now, cold, certain. Whatever I have to do, however far I have to run, he's not taking you, I promise, baby. Mommy's going to keep you safe. She sat in the rocking chair and nursed Owen, feeling him relax against her, his cries fading to whimpers and then to the soft snuffling sounds of a baby feeding. Outside the window, Boston went about its business, oblivious. The sun shone. Traffic moved. People walked their dogs and bought coffee and complained about the heat. And inside a Beacon Hill brownstone, a woman who'd been drowning finally found solid ground. It was made of anger and betrayal and the fierce protective love that mothers have for their children. But it was solid, and she could stand on it, and standing, she could fight. By 5:45 that evening, Claire knew with the certainty of her nursing training that something was terribly, catastrophically wrong. Owen had been crying for 2 hours and 17 minutes. She knew because she'd been watching the clock, timing the episodes the way she'd been trained to do in the NICU. But this wasn't the normal fussiness of a colicky infant. This was different. The pitch of his cries had changed, become desperate, almost keening. She tried everything in her considerable arsenal, nursing though he'd pushed away from her breast after only a few seconds. A bottle which he'd refused completely. She'd checked his diaper 3 times, changed him twice. She'd stripped him down to check for a hair tourniquet, that nightmare scenario where a strand of hair wraps around a baby's toe or finger and cuts off circulation. Nothing. She'd tried different positions, upright against her shoulder, cradled in her arms, on his belly across her knees. She'd walked him through the house, bounced him gently, swayed in the practiced rhythm that usually soothed him. She'd run the vacuum cleaner because the white noise sometimes helped. She'd turned on the bathroom fan and held him near it. She'd tried the hairdryer, the washing machine, every desperate mother's remedy she could remember from her years working in pediatrics. Nothing worked. Owen just kept crying, his little body rigid with distress, and then suddenly he'd gone quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of sleep, but the exhausted silence of someone who'd run out of the energy to protest. That scared her more than the crying. Claire touched his forehead and her professional training kicked in before her maternal panic could fully take hold. He was burning up, not just warm, not just a little elevated, burning. The kind of heat that radiated through his onesie and made her hand recoil instinctively. She carried him to the nursery, moving quickly but not running, forcing herself to stay calm. The digital thermometer was in the top drawer of the changing table, still in its package from the hospital. Her hands shook as she tore it open. The first reading came back error. She'd moved too fast, hadn't held it steady. She took a breath, forced herself to slow down, and tried again. This time the thermometer beeped and displayed a number that made her stomach drop. 103.8 degrees Fahrenheit. For an adult, that would be concerning but not necessarily an emergency. For a 7-week-old infant, it was terrifying. Claire grabbed her phone, pulled up the pediatrician's after-hours number, and dialed with fingers that barely worked right. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Pick up, pick up, pick up. A nurse answered on the 4th ring, her voice calm and professional. After hours pediatric line, this is Karen speaking. How can I help you? This is Claire Bennett. My son Owen is 7 weeks old and his temperature is 103.8. He's been crying for over 2 hours and now he's lethargic. The words came out fast, clipped, using the clinical language that helped her maintain control. Has he had any other symptoms? Vomiting? Diarrhea? Rash? No, just the fever and crying. And now he's too quiet. He's not responding to me normally. Okay, Mrs. Bennett, I need you to listen carefully. Any fever over 100.4 in an infant under 3 months is an automatic emergency. You need to take him to the ER immediately. Don't try to bring the fever down first. Don't give him a bath. Just grab his diaper bag and go straight to Boston Memorial. Do you understand? Yes. Claire was already moving, shifting Owen to one arm while she grabbed the diaper bag with the other. Her hands fumbled with the straps. She tried to remember what she needed. Diapers, formula, his insurance card, his medical records folder, an extra blanket because hospitals were always cold. Her phone rang, still tucked against her shoulder. She didn't recognize the number but answered anyway. Hello? But it wasn't the hospital calling back. It was an automated reminder about Owen's upcoming 2-month checkup. She hung up and immediately called Ryan, straight to voicemail. His recorded voice, confident and professional. You've reached Ryan Bennett at Blackstone Capital. Leave a message and I'll return your call. Claire's voice shook as she spoke to the recording. Ryan, Owen has a high fever. I'm taking him to the ER. Call me back. Please. She grabbed her purse, her keys, tried to remember if there was anything else she needed. Her brain felt slow, sluggish with fear. She'd been a NICU nurse for 6 years. She'd handled hundreds of sick babies, but this was her baby, her son, and all her training felt useless in the face of maternal terror. She called Ryan again as she buckled Owen into his car seat. The baby was frighteningly limp, his eyes half closed, not even protesting the straps. Voicemail again. Ryan, it's me again. His temperature is 103.8. I'm driving to Boston Memorial right now. Please call me back. Her voice broke on the last word. By 7:15, Owen's temperature had climbed to 104.5. Claire knew because the triage nurse had taken it the moment they'd walked through the emergency room doors. The nurse's face had gone tight with concern when she'd seen the number. Within seconds, they were being rushed past the waiting room full of people with broken arms and stomach viruses. A doctor appeared, young but competent looking, her hair pulled back in a neat bun. I'm Dr. Patterson. Talk to me about your son. Claire's voice came out steadier than she felt. Owen Bennett, 7 weeks old, born at term, no complications. Temperature started climbing around 5:30. Now it's 104.5. He's been crying excessively for the past 2 hours, but now he's lethargic and not responsive. No vomiting, no diarrhea, no rash, no recent illness exposure that I know of. Has he been feeding normally? He nursed this morning, but refused a bottle this afternoon. And he wouldn't nurse again when I tried. Dr. Patterson was already examining Owen, her hands gentle but quick. She checked his fontanelle, the soft spot on his skull, looked in his ears and throat, listened to his chest. The baby whimpered but didn't have the energy to cry. Okay, Dr. Patterson said, and her tone was carefully controlled in a way that made Claire's stomach clench with fear. We need to run some tests. I'm concerned about the fever combined with his age. We need to rule out bacterial infection, possibly meningitis. Meningitis. The word hit Claire like a physical blow. She'd seen babies with meningitis in the NICU. She knew the statistics. 30% mortality rate in infants, higher if treatment was delayed. Permanent brain damage in survivors. "Where's Dad?" Dr. Patterson asked gently, looking around as if Ryan might materialize. "I don't know." Claire heard her voice crack. "I've called him. He's not answering." Patterson's expression shifted. Something that might have been sympathy or might have been judgment. Claire couldn't tell and didn't care. "Okay, we're going to get him admitted and start some tests. A nurse will come get you in a moment. Try to stay calm. Most fevers in infants are nothing serious, but we need to be thorough." The nurse who came to get Claire was older, with kind eyes and efficient hands. Her name tag read Sandra. She led Claire to a pediatric bay where Owen was already being hooked up to monitors. IV stands flanked the tiny bed. The beeping of heart rate monitors filled the air. "We need to do a lumbar puncture," Sandra explained. "A spinal tap to check the spinal fluid for infection. It's standard procedure for high fevers in newborns." Claire nodded. She knew this. She'd assisted with dozens of lumbar punctures during her years in the NICU, but knowing what was coming didn't make it easier to watch them wheel her son away behind a curtain. "You can wait here," Sandra said. "It usually takes about 20 minutes. Is there anyone you'd like us to call? Your husband, maybe?" "I've tried." Claire's voice was flat. "He's not answering." She called Ryan again, and again, and again. Each call went straight to voicemail. She left messages that became increasingly desperate. Message 4, timestamp 7:48 p.m. "Ryan, I'm in the emergency room. Owen might have meningitis. They're doing a spinal tap." "Where are you?" Message 8, timestamp 9:15 p.m. "They're doing the procedure now. I can hear him screaming. He's been screaming for 20 minutes and I can't go in there and I can't comfort him. And where are you, Ryan? He needs his father. I need you. Where are you?" Across the sea, in the presidential suite of the Liberty Hotel, a converted historic jail that now catered to Boston's elite with rooms costing $2,500 a night, Ryan Bennett raised a champagne flute. Dom Perignon, 2006, one of the best vintages. The bubbles caught the soft lighting, golden and perfect. The suite was magnificent. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Charles River. A king bed covered in Egyptian cotton sheets with a thread count higher than most people's monthly rent. Rose petals scattered artfully across the white duvet. Candles flickering on every surface. Soft jazz playing from hidden speakers. Something sultry and sophisticated. It looked like a movie set. It looked like seduction given architectural form. It looked like Ryan had planned this for weeks, which he had. Amber Sinclair emerged from the bathroom wearing a cocktail dress that had cost more than most people spent on a month of groceries. Deep red silk that clung to curves enhanced by expensive personal training and a meal plan she followed religiously. Her blonde hair fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. She was 27, 12 years younger than Claire, and she worked as executive communications director at Blackstone Capital. The position had been created specifically for her with a salary of $180,000 a year. Her job mostly involved managing Ryan's calendar, preparing his presentations, and accompanying him to client dinners. Some people at the firm whispered that it was a suspicious position. Most people were smart enough not to whisper too loudly. "You look incredible," Ryan said, and meant it. Amber was beautiful in that carefully constructed way that required money and effort and complete dedication to appearance. She was nothing like Claire, who these days wore the same sweatpants for 3 days and hadn't had a haircut in 6 months. "You don't look so bad yourself." Amber's smile was perfect, practiced. She'd spent 4 years studying theater before pivoting to a business degree. The acting training showed. Ryan's phone buzzed on the nightstand. The screen lit up. Claire. 9 missed calls now. He'd turned the ringer off an hour ago because Claire had been calling repeatedly. Probably about something baby-related. The kid had been fussy lately, but that was normal, right? Babies cried. That was literally their only form of communication. Amber saw the phone light up, and her smile tightened just slightly. "Are you seriously going to let her ruin tonight?" Ryan looked at his phone, then at Amber. He felt a flicker of something. Concern? Guilt? But Amber was here, and Claire was at home, and he'd spent $3,000 on this suite, and another 500 on champagne and dinner. He deserved this. He worked 80-hour weeks. He'd built their entire life. Claire got to stay home with the baby, which was basically a vacation, right? It's probably just baby stuff, he said, reaching for his phone more out of habit than concern. You know how new mothers are. Everything is a crisis. Amber walked over and took the phone from his hand. Her fingers were cool and deliberate as she pressed and held the power button. The screen went dark. It's our anniversary, 6 months since our first night together. She deserves one night without you dropping everything. She pressed her lips against his neck. Besides, you're with me now. The phone died with a soft vibration. Ryan watched it go dark and felt that flicker of concern grow stronger. Claire had called 9 times. That was unusual even for her. But Amber's lips were on his skin and her hand was sliding down his chest and the champagne was excellent, and he pushed the feeling away. Tonight was about him, about Amber, about their future together, about the life he deserved instead of the one he'd ended up with, trapped with a crying baby and a wife who'd let herself go, and a brownstone that felt more like a prison than a home. Tonight is about us, he agreed, and pulled Amber close and let himself forget about his wife and son entirely. At Boston Memorial Hospital, Claire sat alone in a plastic chair in the pediatric bay and listened to her son scream. The sound came from behind the curtain where they'd taken him for the lumbar puncture, muffled but unmistakable. Owen's cries were different now, not the usual infant fussiness, but something raw and agonized, the sound of pain he didn't understand and couldn't escape. A spinal tap involved inserting a needle between the vertebrae of the lower spine to extract cerebrospinal fluid. In adults, it was uncomfortable. In infants, it was torture. They had to curl the baby into a tight ball, hold him still while he fought and screamed. Insert a needle into one of the most sensitive areas of his body. The procedure could take 20 minutes or more if they couldn't get the needle placed right. Owen had been screaming for 18 minutes now. Claire knew because she was watching the clock on the wall, counting every second, every cry, feeling each one like a knife in her chest. She wanted to burst through that curtain and grab her son and run. She wanted to make them stop. But she also knew they had to do this. That meningitis could kill him, that this pain was necessary to save his life. Where was Ryan? She called again. Message 11, timestamp 10:17 p.m. They got the spinal fluid. They're running tests. It takes an hour to get results. Owen's exhausted. He cried for 20 minutes straight during the procedure. He kept looking around like he was looking for someone to save him. I think he was looking for you. Where are you, Ryan? Where the fuck are you? She'd never sworn at him before. Not in 5 years of marriage, even when he missed their anniversary or forgot her birthday or worked through Christmas. She'd stayed calm, stayed understanding, stayed the supportive wife who never complained. But something was breaking inside her as she sat in this emergency room alone, listening to her son scream, calling a husband who wouldn't answer. Dr. Patterson came out at 11:42 p.m. Her face was carefully neutral. Mrs. Bennett, good news. The test came back negative for meningitis. Claire's legs went weak with relief. Oh, thank God, thank God. However, Dr. Patterson continued, Owen does have a severe bacterial infection. We're starting him on IV antibiotics, and we'll need to keep him here for 48 hours for observation. The fever should start coming down in the next few hours. Can I see him? Of course, Rachel. Owen was in a small bed surrounded by monitors, an IV line taped to his tiny arm. He looked so small, so fragile, so completely helpless. His eyes were open but unfocused, exhausted beyond the capacity to cry anymore. When Claire touched his hand, his fingers didn't curl around hers the way they usually did. Hey, baby, she whispered. Mommy's here. You're going to be okay. She pulled up a chair and sat beside his bed, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall, counting each breath like a prayer. Her phone was in her other hand. She called Ryan one last time. It was 11:57 p.m. The phone rang. Once, twice, 3 times. Then voicemail. Claire's voice when she spoke was different. Not crying anymore. Not begging. Just flat, dead, emptied of everything but truth. Test came back negative for meningitis. It's just a severe bacterial infection. He'll live. But you weren't here. You weren't here when they did the spinal tap. You weren't here when I had to listen to him scream. You weren't here when they told me it might be meningitis and I thought I was going to lose him. You chose not to be here. I'll never forget that, Ryan. Never. She ended the call and turned off her phone. She didn't want to hear his excuses when he finally bothered to listen to his messages. She didn't want his apologies. She just wanted to sit with her son and hold his hand and be grateful he was alive. Outside the hospital, Boston went about its business. The city never slept, just shifted into its nocturnal mode. Ambulances came and went. Drunk people stumbled out of bars. Late-night workers headed home on the last trains. Life continued in all its messy, complicated glory. And in a luxury hotel suite, Ryan Bennett finally woke up. Amber was asleep beside him, her blonde hair spread across the pillow like something from a shampoo commercial. He reached for his phone out of habit, remembered she'd turned it off, felt that flicker of concern become a spike of anxiety. He found the phone on the dresser where Amber had placed it, turned it on, watched the screen light up. 27 missed calls, 19 text messages, 11 voicemails, all from Claire. Ryan's hands went numb. The phone felt suddenly heavy, dangerous. He fumbled to his voicemail, hands shaking so badly he almost dropped the device. The first message was calm, controlled. Ryan, Owen has a high fever. I'm taking him to the ER. Call me back, please. By message 4, her voice was panicked. Ryan, I'm in the emergency room. Owen might have meningitis. They're doing a spinal tap. Where are you? By message 8, she was sobbing. They're doing the procedure now. I can hear him screaming. He's been screaming for 20 minutes and I can't go in there and I can't comfort him. And where are you, Ryan? He needs his father. I need you. Where are you? The messages continued, each one more desperate than the last, each one a knife twisting deeper into Ryan's chest. He could hear her voice breaking, could hear the terror and exhaustion and loneliness, could hear the moment she realized he wasn't coming. The final message was the worst because her voice had gone flat, emotionless, dead. Tests came back negative for meningitis. It's just a severe bacterial infection. He'll live, but you weren't here. You weren't here when they did the spinal tap. You weren't here when I had to listen to him scream. You weren't here when they told me it might be meningitis and I thought I was going to lose him. You chose not to be here. I'll never forget that, Ryan. Never. Ryan sat on the edge of the bed, still naked, the expensive sheets pooling around his waist, and felt his entire world tilt. His son had been in the hospital, fighting a possibly fatal infection, undergoing painful procedures. And Ryan had been here, with Amber, with his phone off, choosing champagne and rose petals over his family. He jumped out of bed, grabbing his clothes, his hands shaking so badly he could barely button his shirt. Amber stirred, her voice sleep-soft. Baby, what's wrong? My son was in the hospital. He was dying. Claire called me 11 times. Ryan couldn't make his voice work properly. The words came out strained, choked. Amber sat up, suddenly awake, her perfect makeup smudged now. Oh my God, is he okay? I don't know. I have to go. I have to. Ryan couldn't finish the sentence. He just grabbed his jacket and his keys and ran for the door. Wait, let me come with you. No. The word came out sharp, almost violent. Ryan turned on her, saw her flinch back. This is my fuck up, mine. I fucked up. I really fucked up. He was out the door in under 3 minutes, still buttoning his shirt, his tie hanging loose around his neck, leaving Amber sitting alone in a hotel room that cost $2,500 a night, surrounded by dying candles and wilted rose petals in the ruins of his lies. Ryan took an Uber home, his hands shaking too badly to trust himself behind the wheel. The driver tried to make small talk about the weather, the Red Sox, the traffic, but gave up after Ryan's one-word responses. They drove through Boston in silence while Ryan stared at his phone, trying to call Claire again and again. Every call went straight to an automated message. The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service. Not just turned off, disconnected. That required intent, required going into a carrier store or calling customer service. You didn't accidentally disconnect a phone. You did it when you wanted to be unreachable. The Uber pulled over to the brownstone at 6:47 in the morning. Gray dawn light filtered through the city, making everything look washed out and unreal. Ryan fumbled with his wallet, overtipped because he couldn't think clearly enough to calculate 20%, and stumbled up the front steps. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely get his key in the lock. When he finally managed, the door swung open to complete silence. Not the peaceful quiet of sleeping people, but the hollow emptiness of an abandoned house. The kind of silence that had weight, had presence, had wrongness embedded in it. "Claire?" His voice echoed off the marble floors, bounced off the high ceilings, came back to him unanswered. "Owen?" Nothing, no response. No baby cries. No sound of anyone breathing anywhere in the three-story brownstone. Just Ryan's footsteps, in his own ragged breath, and the terrible certainty growing in his chest that he was alone. He moved through the first floor like a man underwater, everything slow and strange. The living room looked exactly as it had yesterday morning. The kitchen was clean, dishes done, counters wiped, everything in its place. Too much in its place. It looked staged, like a museum exhibit of a life instead of an actual life being lived. Ryan took the stairs two at a time, his heart hammering. "Claire, Claire, please." Owen's nursery stopped him cold. The room was perfect, immaculate. The crib was made with hospital corners, sheets tucked in precisely. The changing table was wiped clean, organized with military precision. But the musical mobile that usually hung above the crib was gone. The basket of Owen's favorite toys, empty. The diaper bag that always hung on the back of the door, missing. Ryan opened drawers with shaking hands, half empty. Someone had carefully removed exactly what they needed and left the rest behind like it didn't matter. The expensive organic baby clothes he'd insisted on buying, the designer blankets, the costly organic crib sheets, all still there. But Owen's everyday onesies, his favorite soft blanket with the worn edges, his practical daily necessities, all gone. In the master bedroom, Claire's side of the walk-in closet gaped open. Her cocktail dresses still hung on their padded hangers, designer labels facing out. Her expensive heels lined up in their cubby holes. Her jewelry box sat on its shelf, still full of the pieces Ryan had given her over the years. But her jeans were gone, her comfortable sweaters, her sneakers, her daily wear, the clothes she actually lived in. In the bathroom, her side of the double vanity was stripped bare. Toothbrush gone, contact solution gone. The prescription moisturizer she used every night gone. Her hairdryer, her makeup bag, all the unglamorous necessities of daily life vanished. But her expensive La Mer face cream still sat on the counter, barely touched. The designer perfume he'd given her for Christmas, unopened. She'd taken what mattered and left everything that didn't. It felt deliberate, symbolic. A message Ryan was only beginning to understand. He walked back downstairs in a daze. That's when he saw what she'd left on the kitchen island, arranged with careful precision like evidence at a crime scene. Their wedding photo face down. He turned it over and saw their smiling faces from 5 years ago, young and happy, and completely oblivious to how this would end. He looked at Claire in her simple white dress, her eyes bright with joy, and tried to remember when she'd stopped looking at him like that. Her engagement ring sat beside the photo. 3 carats, flawless clarity, set in platinum. It had cost $45,000. Ryan had been so proud when he'd bought it, had felt like a real man, a provider, someone who could give his woman the best. Now it sat on the marble counter like an accusation, catching the morning light, mocking him with its value. Her wedding band lay next to the engagement ring, simple yellow gold, engraved inside with their initials and wedding date. She'd worn it every day for 5 years. He'd never seen her without it, until now. And stuck to the Sub-Zero refrigerator, a single yellow Post-it note, the kind of mundane object that shouldn't carry weight but somehow did. 3 words written in Claire's neat handwriting. "You made your choice." Ryan grabbed his phone with shaking hands and called Claire's cell. The automated message played again, mechanical and merciless. "The number you have reached has been disconnected or is no longer in service." He called her sister Jessica next, his fingers fumbling with the contacts list. Jessica answered on the first ring, which meant she'd been waiting for his call. Her voice was ice and acid. "I don't know who this is, but Ryan Bennett can go fuck himself. Jess, please, Ryan hated how his voice cracked. I need to know where Claire is. I need to know Owen's okay. She called me from the hospital at 3 in the morning. Jessica's voice shook with rage. Alone. Her baby almost died and you were nowhere. You don't get to ask for anything ever again. I made a mistake. Let me talk to her. A mistake? You turned off your phone while your infant son was having a spinal tap. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. You chose your mistress over your family and now you get to live with that choice. I didn't know. You didn't know because you didn't answer. Jessica was shouting now. She called you 11 times, Ryan. 11. Do you know what that sounds like? Desperation. Terror. My sister, who is one of the strongest people I know, was breaking, and you couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone. Where is she? Please, Jess, I just need to know they're safe. She doesn't want to talk to you. She doesn't want to see you. If I knew where she was, I wouldn't tell you. But I don't. She said it's safer that way, that you couldn't manipulate what I didn't know. What? Why would she think I'd manipulate? Because she found your texts. Jessica's voice went quiet, which was somehow worse than the shouting. She found everything. The affair, the planning, the way you were building a case to paint her as unstable. She knows, Ryan. She knows you were trying to take Owen from her. So she took him first, and she made damn sure you couldn't find them. The line went dead. Ryan stood in his kitchen, the morning sun illuminating dust motes in the air, and felt the full weight of what he'd done settling onto his shoulders. Claire knew about Amber, about his plans, about everything. She'd found his text somehow, and she'd known exactly what he was doing, and she'd planned this. This wasn't a panicked flight. This was strategic, calculated. She'd outsmarted him. He tried Claire's parents next. Her mother, Margaret, answered, crying. How could you? How could you do this to our daughter? Where is she? I need to know Owen's okay. Her father, Bill, took the phone. His voice was cold, flat, final. You lost the right to ask about our grandson when you turned off your phone. Don't call here again. The line went dead. Ryan sank onto one of their expensive kitchen bar stools and tried to think. Who would Claire turn to? She didn't have many friends in Boston. She'd moved here for him when they got married, left her life in Providence behind. Her college roommates were scattered across the country. Her nursing school friends had drifted away after Owen was born because she'd stopped returning their calls, too exhausted for socializing. But someone had helped her. You couldn't disappear this completely, this quickly, without help. Someone had coached her on disconnecting her phone, on avoiding digital footprints, on vanishing without a trace. His phone exploded with notifications. Not calls, worse. Social media alerts. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all going off simultaneously like bombs detonating. Ryan opened Facebook with a sense of dread, and his blood turned to ice. Jessica had posted 7 minutes ago. The photo showed Claire in a hospital chair. Mascara streaked down her face like she'd been crying for hours. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale with exhaustion and terror. She was holding Owen, who had an oxygen mask over his tiny face. Monitors surrounded them. The timestamp on the hospital whiteboard visible in the background read 2:47 a.m. The caption was brutal in its simplicity. This is my sister at 3 a.m. last night. Alone in the ER with her 7-week-old baby who had a 105-degree fever and was having seizures. Where was her husband? At the Liberty Hotel with his executive assistant, Amber Sinclair. My sister called him 11 times. He turned off his phone. Ryan Bennett works at Blackstone Capital Group in Boston. Amber Sinclair also works there. Share this. Every woman should know who they're working with. The post had been shared 12,000 times in 7 minutes. The comments were already piling up, hundreds of them, a digital mob forming in real time. I work with this piece of shit. Forwarding to HR immediately. His wife is a saint. She used to be my son's NICU nurse at Children's Hospital. She saved his life when he was born premature. And this is how her husband treats her? The other woman's Instagram is at @AmberSinclair_Boston. Go let her know what you think. I found his LinkedIn. Everyone in finance should know what kind of man he is. Emailing his boss now. Someone posted a screenshot of Ryan's LinkedIn profile with his photo and title. Someone else had found their wedding announcement from the Boston Globe archives. Another person had found photos from Ryan's company website. Within minutes, his entire life was being cataloged, archived, weaponized. His address was posted, his phone number, his email. People were already calling Blackstone Capital's main line, demanding he be fired. Someone had started a petition. Ryan's phone rang. His boss, Martin Lawrence. The display showed 7:17 a.m. My office, now, 2 words. Then the line went dead. Ryan looked down at himself. He was still wearing yesterday's suit, rumpled and reeking of hotel soap and Amber's perfume. His tie was askew. He had no time to shower or change. He grabbed his wallet and keys and ran for his car, even though he already knew what was coming. Blackstone Capital's headquarters occupied 3 floors of a glass tower in the financial district. The building was designed to impress clients, all soaring ceilings and marble floors and views of Boston Harbor that cost extra. Ryan had walked through these halls like he owned them for the past 6 years. He'd closed deals here, built relationships, made millions for the firm and for himself. Now the receptionist wouldn't meet his eyes. Martin's assistant showed him into the corner office without a word, without her usual friendly greeting, like he'd become contaminated overnight. Martin stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at the harbor. He was 52, graying at the temples, wearing a suit that cost more than a used car. He'd mentored Ryan, had championed him for promotion, had trusted him with high-profile clients. He didn't turn around when Ryan entered, just kept looking out at the water like the view was more interesting than this conversation. "The board wants you gone." Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He'd expected this, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real in a way that anticipation hadn't. Martin finally turned around. His face was carefully neutral, the expression of someone who'd practiced this conversation. "Your mistress works here. You put the firm at liability for a sexual harassment lawsuit. The optics are destroying us. We're trending on Twitter. I've had 17 clients call this morning. 17, before 8 a.m. You know what they're saying? They're saying they don't want to do business with a firm that employs men who abandon their dying infants for affairs. I can explain." Martin held up a hand. "I don't want to hear it. I don't care. Your personal life became the firm's problem the moment that photo hit Facebook. We're a private equity firm, Ryan. Our entire business model is based on trust. Clients trust us with their money because they believe we make good decisions. You've just demonstrated catastrophically poor judgment. I'll take a leave of absence. Let this blow over." "It's not going to blow over." Martin's voice was flat. "You're being terminated, effective immediately. HR will discuss your severance. You have 15 minutes to clean out your desk, and then security will escort you from the building. Don't make a scene. We'll spin this as mutual separation. Say you're pursuing other opportunities. But we're done here." Ryan felt the floor tilt beneath him. This was his career, everything he'd built. "You can't just watch me." Martin picked up his desk phone. "Security to 42, please. Mr. Bennett is leaving." Ryan walked out of Martin Lawrence's office for the last time at 7:53 in the morning, carrying a cardboard box with his personal effects. The entire floor had gone quiet, everyone pretending to work while watching him from the corners of their eyes. The walk to the elevator felt like a perp walk, like everyone could see his shame branded across his forehead. In the elevator, his reflection in the polished doors showed a man who looked 10 years older than he had yesterday. His hair was disheveled, his eyes were bloodshot, his expensive suit looked slept in and wrong. He looked like exactly what he was, a man whose life was falling apart in real time. A photographer was waiting in the lobby. Someone had tipped off the press. The flash went off as Ryan walked out carrying his box of belongings. That photo would be on TMZ by noon, on the Boston Globe website by 1, on every major news outlet by evening. Ryan Bennett, disgraced hedge fund manager, caught in affair while infant son hospitalized. His phone rang as he stood on the sidewalk, lost and directionless. His mother. Patricia Bennett's voice was cold in a way Ryan had never heard before. "Tell me Jessica Morgan is lying." Ryan couldn't speak. His throat had closed up completely. Ryan Christopher Bennett, his mother using his full name, the way she had when he was a child caught in some misdeed. Tell me you did not abandon your wife and newborn son for some girl. Mom, it's complicated. It's not complicated. Patricia's voice cracked. You're just like your father. When I was in labor with you, 23 hours of labor, he was at a strip club with his colleagues. I defended you to Claire's parents at Owen's baptism. Margaret asked me if I thought you were really ready to be a father. I told her you were a good man. I told her you'd learn from your father's mistakes. I was wrong. Mom, please. I'm ashamed of you. She was crying now. I raised you better than this. Your father was a terrible husband, but at least he was never cruel enough to let me think he'd changed. You made Claire believe she had a partner. You let her think she was building a life with someone who cared. And then you destroyed her. Where is she? Do you know where she went? Even if I did, I wouldn't tell you. Patricia's voice went cold again. You're no longer welcome at the family compound. Don't contact me again. You've broken my heart and you've disgraced our name. I need time to process what my son has become. The line went dead. A text from his father, Christopher Bennett Sr., arrived 30 seconds later. You're no longer welcome at the family compound in Nantucket. Don't contact your mother again. You've broken her heart. I knew you'd turn out like me. I'd hoped you'd be better. I was wrong. Ryan stood on the sidewalk in the financial district, morning commuters streaming past him on their way to jobs they still had, and felt completely untethered from reality. Yesterday he'd had a career, a family, a future. Now he had a cardboard box full of desk tchotchkes and a viral photo that would follow him for the rest of his life. His phone rang again. Amber. He almost didn't answer, but some sick part of him needed to hear her voice, needed the validation that at least one person didn't hate him. Amber was hysterical. People are sending me death threats. They found my apartment. Someone threw eggs at my car. There's a reporter in my lobby. Amber, I can't deal with this right now. This is your fault. Her voice went shrill. You said she was stable. You said she'd just be sad and move on. You said we'd be together and it would be fine. My son almost died, and my life is being destroyed. I lost my job. They fired me an hour ago. Someone posted my address online. I have to move now. Do you know how much moving costs? Ryan felt something snap inside of him. Good. You made me turn off my phone. Oh, so now it's my fault? Amber's laugh was bitter, ugly. You're pathetic. You know that? You're a pathetic, weak man who blamed everyone else for his choices. I didn't turn off your phone. You did. You chose to leave it off. You chose to stay. This is all on you, and I'm done. We're done. Don't ever contact me again. She hung up. Ryan sank onto a bench in Post Office Square, surrounded by morning joggers and people walking their dogs, and everyone living their normal lives while his imploded. He sat there holding his cardboard box and his dead phone and watched the world continue without him. His phone buzzed with a new voicemail from a number he didn't recognize. He listened with the last dregs of hope, thinking maybe it was Claire, maybe she'd call from a different number to tell him where she was. Mr. Bennett, this is Detective Frank Torres. I'm a private investigator specializing in missing persons cases. I understand you're looking for someone. Call me back and we'll discuss my rates. Ryan called back immediately. This was something. This was action. This was better than sitting on a bench watching his life burn down around him. Frank Torres had an office above a bakery in the North End. The smell of fresh cannoli drifted up through the floorboards, sweet and cloying. He was 55, built like a boxer, gone slightly soft around the middle, with sharp eyes that had seen too much, and a handshake that was firm without being aggressive. Tell me about your wife, Frank said, pouring coffee from a pot that looked older than Ryan. The mug he handed over was chipped but clean. Any history of mental illness? Instability? Drug use? Affairs? Ryan shook his head, feeling sick at the implications. No. She's the most stable person I know. She was a NICU nurse at Children's Hospital for 6 years. One of the best. Patients requested her specifically. She's meticulous, organized, calm under pressure. Any family she'd run to? Friends? Her parents hate me now. Her sister posted that thing on Facebook. Ryan's voice cracked. I don't know who her friends are anymore. She's been home with the baby, and I worked long hours, and I just assumed she was fine. Frank raised an eyebrow. You don't know your wife's friends? I stopped paying attention. The admission hurt coming out. I thought she was okay. She never complained. She never asked for help. I thought that meant she didn't need any. Frank made notes in a worn leather notebook, his handwriting surprisingly neat. Give me 24 hours. I'll see what I can find. My retainer is $5,000. I charge $200 an hour plus expenses. If you want me to find your wife and son, it's going to cost you, whatever it takes. Ryan pulled out his credit card, praying it wouldn't be declined. Just find them, please. Frank Torres called Ryan at 9:37 the next morning. Ryan hadn't slept. He'd spent the night in his empty brownstone, sitting in Owen's nursery, staring at the empty crib, thinking about all the moments he'd missed. Owen's first smile, his first laugh, the way he'd started tracking objects with his eyes. Ryan had been there physically for some of those moments, but not really present, always checking his phone, always thinking about work or Amber or anything, except the small human whose life depended on him. Now that small human was gone, and Ryan would give anything to have those moments back. Mr. Bennett, Frank's voice was carefully neutral. I found something interesting. Your wife withdrew $15,000 cash from a personal savings account you didn't know she had. Ryan sat up. What? We have joint accounts. I thought we shared everything. The account was opened 2 years ago, in her maiden name, Claire Morgan. She's been depositing small amounts, 200 here, 300 there, for 24 months. Nothing large enough to trigger alerts or raise questions, but it added up. She's been planning an exit strategy for a long time. 2 years. Before Owen was born. Before Amber. Ryan felt sick. She was planning to leave me before any of this happened? Or planning to have options if she needed them, Frank corrected. There's a difference between planning to leave and planning to be able to leave. A lot of women do this. It's called an escape fund. Did she take it all? Every penny. Plus she had another account you didn't know about. Investment account, another $32,000, also in her maiden name. She liquidated it 3 days ago. So she has roughly $47,000 cash that you can't trace. Ryan ran both hands through his hair. What else? South Station bus terminal. Security footage shows a woman matching Claire's description with an infant carrier at 8:47 a.m. yesterday morning, about 2 hours after you came home. She was wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, but the body language matches. She went to the ticket counter. Where was she going? That's where it gets interesting. Frank's voice held a note of professional admiration. She bought a ticket to Portland, Maine, paid cash. Then she walked toward the buses, stood in line with the other Portland passengers. Cameras show her waiting at gate 7, but when the Portland bus started boarding, she walked right past it, went out the side exit, got into a silver Honda Accord that was waiting. License plate was obscured by mud. She used the bus ticket as a decoy. Exactly. She wanted it to look like she went to Portland. Classic misdirection. Amateur investigators, even some professionals, would have stopped there. But I ran facial recognition on every camera angle. She walked out the east exit at 9:04 a.m. and got in that Honda. It drove north on I-95. Who was driving? Working on it. But the car is registered to a Thomas Morrison. 63 years old, lives in Kennebunkport, Maine. Retired family law attorney. Ring any bells? Ryan searched his memory. Claire's godfather. I met him once at our wedding. Distinguished-looking guy, silver hair. He gave a toast about how he'd known Claire since she was born. Frank was quiet for a beat. Your wife's godfather is a retired family law attorney. That's not good news for you, Mr. Bennett. Why not? Because it means she has access to someone who knows exactly how to help her disappear legally. Someone who knows the system inside and out. Someone who probably has connections with other attorneys, judges, court officials. If he's helping her, she's not just running scared. She's building a case. Ryan felt his stomach drop. A case for what? Custody, divorce, protection orders. Frank's voice was matter of fact. You have a wife who's a trained medical professional, which makes her credible. You have a newborn who was hospitalized while you were unreachable. You have documented evidence of an affair with a subordinate employee. You have a viral social media post painting you as a negligent father. And now you have Retired family law attorney with 40 years of experience helping your wife disappear. Mr. Bennett, you're not in a missing persons situation. You're in a legal ambush. Ryan stood up pacing his kitchen. I need to find her. I need to explain. Explain what? Frank interrupted. That you didn't mean to turn off your phone? That it was a misunderstanding? Mr. Bennett, I'm going to be blunt with you. I've been doing this work for 30 years. I've seen a lot of husbands try to find wives who've left them. The ones who succeed aren't the ones trying to explain. They're the ones trying to make amends. And even then, most don't succeed. I just want to see my son. Ryan's voice broke. I just want to know he's okay. Then you need a lawyer. A good one, because this isn't about finding them anymore. This is about what happens when they decide to resurface. And they will resurface, probably with divorce papers and a custody petition. The question is whether you'll be ready. Find them anyway, Ryan said. Please, I need to know where they are. Frank sighed. I'll keep looking. But Mr. Bennett, even if I find them, you can't just show up. That would look like stalking, possibly be grounds for a restraining order. You need to do this through legal channels. Just find them, Ryan repeated. He hung up and immediately Googled family law attorneys in Boston. The search returned thousands of results. He refined it. Best custody lawyer, Boston. Still hundreds. He refined again. Ruthless custody attorney never loses. One name kept appearing in the results and in the comments sections of legal forums. Diane Caraway, 64 years old, steel gray hair, eyes like a shark, never lost a custody case in 40 years of practice, $950 an hour, minimum retainer, $50,000. Ryan called her office, made an appointment for that afternoon. Then he sat in his kitchen and tried to figure out how to pay for a lawyer when his savings were nearly depleted, his credit cards were maxed, and he'd just lost his job. He'd get the money somehow. He'd mortgage the brownstone if he had to. He'd sell everything he owned. Because Frank was right. This wasn't about finding Claire anymore. This was about war. And Ryan needed to win. Diane Caraway's office overlooked Boston Harbor from the 40th floor of a glass tower that seemed designed to intimidate. The view was spectacular, all glittering water and sailboats, and the kind of beauty that cost extra. Her reception area looked like something from Architectural Digest. Leather furniture, abstract art that probably cost more than most cars, and a receptionist who looked like she moonlighted as a runway model. Ms. Caraway will see you now, the receptionist said after making Ryan wait exactly 22 minutes. A power play. Ryan recognized it from his own business negotiations. Make them wait just long enough to know you're important. Not so long they leave. Diane Caraway looked exactly like her photos. Steel gray hair, cut in a severe bob. A charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000. Minimal jewelry except for a Cartier watch that cost more than a semester of college tuition. She was 64 but looked 50, the kind of preservation that came from expensive procedures and good genetics and absolute self-discipline. She gestured to the chair across from her desk without standing. Mr. Bennett, I've read about you in the papers. Your situation has become quite public. Ryan felt his face flush with shame. I need help, obviously. Diane opened a folder on her desk. In the past 36 hours, you've lost your job, been publicly shamed on social media, had your affair exposed, and lost all contact with your wife and infant son. Your wife has disconnected her phone, liquidated her accounts, and disappeared with help from a retired family law attorney who happens to be her godfather. Did I miss anything? Ryan shook his head mutely. So let me be clear about what I can and cannot do for you. Diane leaned forward, her eyes sharp and assessing. I cannot make you look like a good husband. That ship has sailed and burned. I cannot erase the viral photo of your wife alone in the hospital. I cannot make people forget that you had an affair with a subordinate employee. What I can do is make sure you have access to your son. That's my expertise. Custody. And I'm very, very good at it. How? By being better at this than whoever your wife hires. By knowing the judges in Maine, because that's where she's going to file if my guess is correct. By understanding that family court isn't about justice or fairness. It's about optics and strategy and who tells the better story. Your wife has a good story right now. Woman abandoned during medical emergency, but stories can be reframed. What do you mean? Diane pulled out a legal pad and began making notes. Your wife fled the state with a minor child without notification. That's parental alienation. She disconnected all communication, preventing you from having any contact with your son. That's concerning behavior. She withdrew significant amounts of money and went into hiding. That suggests instability, possibly postpartum mental health issues. She's not unstable, Ryan protested. She's one of the most stable people I know. I don't care what's true, Mr. Bennett. I care what I can prove. And I can prove that her behavior since leaving shows concerning signs. The late-night hospital visit where she was documented as highly emotional. The sudden flight from the state, the complete communication blackout. Add in some carefully worded suggestions about postpartum depression, maybe a psychological evaluation, and suddenly her narrative isn't quite as sympathetic. That's not fair. She was emotional because our son was sick and I wasn't there. Fair doesn't win custody cases, Mr. Bennett. Strategy wins custody cases. Now, do you want to see your son or do you want to feel good about yourself? Because you can't have both. Ryan was quiet for a long moment. He thought about Owen, about never seeing him grow up, about being the absent father, the weekend dad, the man his son would barely know. I want to see my son. Good, Diane made more notes. My retainer is $50,000, non-refundable. I charge $950 an hour. A case like this could easily run 200 hours before trial. That's $200,000 total, possibly more. Can you afford that? Ryan thought about his nearly empty bank account, his max credit cards, his lost job. I'll figure it out. You have a brownstone worth $3 million. Mortgage it. Diane's tone was matter of fact. Liquidate your retirement accounts. Sell your car. Do whatever you have to do. Because I promise you, your wife has someone funding her legal defense. Probably that godfather. And if she's hired someone like Virginia Reeves, you're going to need me. Who's Virginia Reeves, the best divorce attorney in Maine? If your wife was smart enough to plan this escape, she was smart enough to hire the best. Diane smiled, and it wasn't a warm expression. Lucky for you, I'm better. Ryan signed the retainer agreement with shaking hands. He was mortgaging his future on a lawyer who openly admitted she'd reframed the truth to win. But what choice did he have? Claire had taken Owen and disappeared, and Ryan needed his son back. Needed to prove he wasn't the monster everyone thought he was, even if becoming that monster was the only way to win. Ryan didn't have to wait long. 7 days after Claire vanished, a process server appeared at his door at 6:13 in the morning. The man was in his 40s, built like he worked construction on the side, with a face that said he'd seen too much drama and wasn't impressed by any of it anymore. He'd clearly read the viral Facebook post. His expression held barely concealed contempt as he handed over the manila envelope. Ryan Bennett? Yes, you've been served. The man thrust papers into Ryan's hands and walked away without another word, like Ryan was contaminated. Inside was a petition for dissolution of marriage filed in Cumberland County, Maine. Claire's name appeared as petitioner, represented by Virginia Reeves of Reeves and Associates. The list of demands made Ryan's hands shake as he read. Full physical custody of Owen Bennett with supervised visitation only for Ryan Bennett. Child support in the amount of $6,000 per month. Spousal support in the amount of $4,000 per month for a period of 5 years. Division of marital assets 60% to Claire, 40% to Ryan, based on his documented financial misconduct. Exclusive use of the marital home until Owen reaches age 18, at which point the property will be sold and proceeds divided according to the 60-40 split. There were exhibits attached, screenshots of Ryan's texts with Amber, the ones Claire had found on his iPad, a timeline of Ryan's whereabouts on the night of Owen's hospitalization. The hospital records showing Claire had been alone, affidavits from Claire's sister, her parents, 3 of her former nursing colleagues, all attesting to her character and competence as a mother. And a declaration from Claire herself, 2 pages of single-spaced text that Ryan forced himself to read, even though every word felt like a knife. I married Ryan Bennett believing we would be partners. I believed he would be present for our family. On the night of August 15th, our 7-week-old son developed a high fever and began having seizures. I called my husband 11 times. He did not answer. I later discovered he had powered off his phone to spend the evening with his mistress, Amber Sinclair. I sat alone in the emergency room while doctors performed a spinal tap on my infant son to rule out bacterial meningitis. I listened to my baby scream for 20 minutes during the procedure. I thought he might die. My husband chose to be unreachable during the worst night of my life. When I discovered text messages showing he had been planning to leave me and paint me as an unstable mother to gain custody, I realized I had no choice but to protect myself and my son. I am requesting full custody because Ryan Bennett has demonstrated he cannot be relied upon in emergencies and has actively worked to undermine my fitness as a parent. I do not feel my son is safe in his care without supervision. Ryan's vision blurred. Seeing it written out like that, clinical and factual, made it somehow worse than hearing Claire's broken voicemail messages. This wasn't emotion. This was a legal argument, and it was devastating. He called Diane immediately. She answered on the second ring, sounding completely awake despite the early hour. I assume you've been served. How did you know? Because I know Virginia Reeves. She doesn't waste time. Email me the entire packet. I'll review it and we'll meet this afternoon to discuss our response. They're asking for full custody. Ryan heard his voice crack. Supervised visits only, like I'm a danger to my own son. That's their opening position. Diane's tone was matter-of-fact, almost bored. Standard strategy in high-conflict divorce. Ask for everything, settle for something in the middle. We'll file a counter-petition requesting joint legal custody and 50-50 physical custody. Make them fight for every inch. But I wasn't there when Owen was in the hospital. How do I argue against that? You don't argue the facts. You argue the narrative. One bad night doesn't make you an unfit father. You made a mistake, yes, but you're committed to making it right. You've enrolled in parenting classes. You're in therapy. You're doing everything the court likes to see. Meanwhile, we point out that Claire fled the state without notice, has completely cut off your access to your son, and is engaging in parental alienation. Two wrongs don't make a right, but they do muddy the waters. Ryan felt sick. This is what it was going to be? Muddy the waters? Make Claire look bad to make himself look less terrible? Mr. Bennett, Diane's voice went hard, do you want to see your son or not? Because if you do, you need to understand how this works. Family court isn't about finding the truth. It's about presenting the most compelling case. Your wife has already started painting you as the villain. We need to complicate that narrative. Make the judge see this as a he said, she said situation rather than a clear case of abandonment. Once we've muddied the waters, we can negotiate. Negotiate what? Access. Time with Owen. Joint custody instead of supervised visits. Diane paused. Mr. Bennett, let me be very clear. You are not going to look good at the end of this. That's not an option anymore. The best we can hope for is that you don't look so bad that you lose all access to your son. Do you understand? Ryan understood. He understood that he'd destroyed his marriage so thoroughly that even winning would look like losing. But he didn't have a choice, I understand. Good. Diane's tone shifted to brisk and businesslike. We have 30 days to file our response. I'll draft a counter-petition and file an emergency motion for temporary custody arrangements. We'll request joint legal custody and a schedule of supervised visitation with the goal of working toward unsupervised. The judge will likely order temporary arrangements pending a full trial. That trial will probably be scheduled for October, maybe November if the court's backlog is bad. Between now and then, you do exactly what I tell you. Understand? Yes. Enroll in parenting classes today. Real ones, not online. Find a therapist and start weekly sessions. Get documentation for all of it. If you're on any dating apps, delete them. If you're still in contact with Amber Sinclair, stop immediately. Your life between now and trial is work, therapy, parenting classes, and preparing for court. Nothing else. No social media, no dating, no going out drinking with friends. You are going to be the model of a reformed man trying to do better. Can you do that? Yes, Ryan said, and meant it. He'd do whatever it took. But even as he agreed, a small voice in the back of his mind whispered that maybe it was too late. Maybe some mistakes couldn't be fixed, only managed. Maybe he'd lost Claire and Owen the moment he'd watched Amber power off his phone and hadn't stopped her. Maybe he deserved to lose. Diane filed the counter petition 3 days later. The emergency motion requested temporary joint legal custody and supervised visitation every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at a court-approved facility. She also filed a motion requesting psychological evaluations for both parties, arguing that if Ryan's mental fitness was being questioned, Claire's should be too. The first hearing was scheduled for September 15th in Cumberland County Courthouse in Portland, Maine. Ryan made the drive up the night before, staying in a budget motel because his credit cards were nearly maxed. He'd mortgaged the brownstone to pay Diane's retainer, sold his Porsche Cayenne and bought a used Honda Accord, cut his expenses to the bone. Every dollar mattered now. He couldn't sleep. Just lay in the motel bed staring at the ceiling, listening to traffic outside and thinking about Claire. Was she sleeping? Was Owen? Did the baby remember him at all? 7 weeks old when Claire left, almost 10 weeks now. That was a lifetime in infant development. Would Owen even recognize his father? Ryan arrived at the courthouse at 8:30 for a 9 a.m. hearing. Diane met him in the parking lot, looking impeccable in a navy suit, while Ryan felt rumpled and nervous in his one remaining good suit. "Remember," Diane said as they walked toward the entrance, "you are remorseful but not broken. You made a mistake, but you're committed to doing better. Don't apologize excessively. Don't grovel. Show the judge you're a man who can co-parent effectively even if the marriage is over. What if I see Claire? You don't speak to her. You don't try to make eye contact. You treat her like a business associate you're no longer associated with. Professional distance. Got it?" "Got it," Ryan said, but his heart was hammering. They walked into the courthouse through security, through hallways that smelled of industrial cleaner and old paper, past courtrooms where other families were destroying each other in real time. And then, as they approached courtroom 3B, Ryan saw her. Claire stood in the hallway with Virginia Reeves, and Ryan barely recognized his own wife. She cut her hair into a sharp bob that framed her face. She wore a navy suit similar to Diane's, professional and buttoned up. But it was her expression that stopped him cold. She looked at him with absolutely no emotion. Not anger, not hurt, not even contempt. Just nothing. Like he was a stranger she'd never met. He opened his mouth to say her name. Diane's hand clamped on his arm. "No," she said quietly but firmly. Virginia Reeves had already stepped between Ryan and Claire, physically blocking his view. "There will be no contact with my client," Ms. Reeves said, her voice carrying clearly. She was older than Diane, maybe 60, with silver hair and the kind of face that had seen every dirty trick and wouldn't be impressed by new ones. "Of course," Diane replied smoothly. "We'll see you inside." They filed into the courtroom. The space was smaller than Ryan expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic courtrooms from TV. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that was elevated but not imposing. Judge Helen Matthews presided, a woman in her mid-60s with gray hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She looked like someone's grandmother. Ryan hoped that meant she'd be sympathetic. He was wrong. "Good morning," Judge Matthews said as everyone settled into their seats. "We're here for the matter of Morgan versus Bennett, case number D-2024-0847. This is a temporary hearing regarding custody arrangements for a minor child, Owen Bennett, age 10 weeks. Ms. Reeves, you filed first. Please proceed." Virginia stood. "Your Honor, my client, Claire Morgan Bennett, is requesting full physical custody with supervised visitation for the respondent, Ryan Bennett. The circumstances are extraordinary and deeply concerning." She laid out the case methodically. The affair with a subordinate employee, the night of August 15th when Owen was hospitalized. Ryan's 11 missed calls from Claire. The text messages showing Ryan had been planning to document Claire as unstable to gain custody. The fact that Claire had to sit alone through a spinal tap procedure on their infant son. "The emotional abuse and manipulation my client endured," Virginia continued, her voice measured but firm, "constitutes a pattern of behavior that makes unsupervised contact dangerous. Not physically dangerous, perhaps, but emotionally and psychologically. Mr. Bennett has shown he cannot be relied upon in emergencies. He has shown he will manipulate and undermine my client's parenting. We are requesting supervised visitation as a protective measure for both mother and child." Diane stood. "Your Honor, Ms. Reeves is painting a dramatic picture, but the facts are more nuanced. Mr. Bennett made a mistake, a serious mistake, yes. But one bad night does not make a man an unfit father. Mr. Bennett has immediately taken steps to address his shortcomings. He's enrolled in parenting classes. He's attending weekly therapy. He's doing everything the court likes to see from someone committed to improvement. Virginia interrupted. He's doing those things after being caught, Your Honor, after his wife left him. That's not genuine change. That's damage control. Ms. Reeves, Judge Matthews said mildly, let counsel finish. Diane continued. Furthermore, Your Honor, we're concerned about Mrs. Bennett's behavior since leaving the marital home. She fled the state without notification. She disconnected all communication, preventing Mr. Bennett from having any contact with his son. She's hiding in an undisclosed location with help from family members. This is parental alienation, pure and simple. We believe both parties should undergo psychological evaluation to determine their fitness for various custody arrangements. Judge Matthews looked over her reading glasses at both attorneys. I've reviewed the filings. I've looked at the text messages, the hospital records, the timeline of events, and I'm going to say something both of you probably won't like. This is a mess. She let that hang in the air for a moment. Mr. Bennett, you made catastrophically poor choices. Turning off your phone while your infant son was hospitalized is indefensible. The court is deeply troubled by that behavior. However, Ms. Morgan, fleeing the state and cutting off all contact is also concerning, regardless of your reasons. Judge Matthews shuffled his papers. Here's what we're going to do. I'm ordering temporary joint legal custody. That means both parents have equal say in major decisions regarding Owen's health, education, and welfare. I'm granting Mrs. Morgan primary physical custody pending the full trial. Mr. Bennett will have supervised visitation every Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. at the Family Connection Center in Portland. Both parties will undergo psychological evaluation by court-appointed professionals. We'll reconvene on October 15th for a full custody trial. Any questions? Ryan felt a surge of hope. He'd get to see Owen every Saturday. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was a start. Claire, he noticed, looked like she'd been slapped. Virginia was whispering urgently in her ear, but Claire just shook her head. Court adjourned, Judge Matthews said and stood. Outside the courthouse, Diane was pleased. That went better than expected. Joint legal custody is good. Supervised visits mean we're building toward unsupervised. The psychological evaluations could go either way, but we'll prepare you for that. I get to see him, Ryan said, and his voice cracked. I get to see Owen every Saturday for 6 hours. Diane's expression was calculating. Now we document every visit. Show you're engaged, appropriate, learning. Build a case that you've changed. By October, we'll request expanded visitation, maybe even overnight visits. Ryan nodded, but he wasn't really listening. He was thinking about Saturday, about holding his son again, about showing Owen that his father did care, did want to be there, even if he'd failed catastrophically before. He didn't see Claire standing 30 feet away, watching him with Virginia. Didn't see the way her face had gone pale when the judge said supervised visits. Didn't see her hand unconsciously rest on her stomach, protective even though Owen wasn't with her. He didn't see that she wasn't celebrating a victory. She was calculating how to protect her son from his own father, and she was willing to do whatever that took, even if it meant becoming someone she didn't recognize in the mirror. The Family Connection Center occupied a renovated Victorian house on the outskirts of Portland, painted in cheerful yellows and blues that were probably meant to be welcoming, but instead felt false, like lipstick on a wound. Inside, the smell of industrial cleaner mixed with the plasticky scent of too many toys in one place. Bright murals covered the walls, cartoon animals and smiling suns that seemed to mock the broken families who passed through these doors. Ryan arrived at 9:45 for his first supervised visit, 15 minutes early because Diane had drilled punctuality into him. Show them you're reliable. Show them you care. Every detail matters. The supervisor was a woman named Sandra Phillips, mid-40s with kind eyes that had probably seen too many bad fathers and learned not to make assumptions. She met Ryan in the lobby with a clipboard and a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mr. Bennett, good morning. She extended her hand. I'm Sandra. I'll be supervising your visits with Owen for the time being. Let me walk you through how this works. She led him to a bright room with soft carpet and age-appropriate toys scattered artfully around. Cameras in every corner, Ryan noticed. Everything documented, everything watched. Your visits will be from 10 to 4 with a lunch break at noon, Sandra explained. I'll be present the entire time, taking notes on your interactions with Owen. I'm looking for appropriate care, safety, engagement with the child. If at any point I feel Owen is in distress or you're behaving inappropriately, I'll end the visit. Understand? I understand. Good, Mrs. Bennett should be here shortly with Owen. I'll give you a few minutes to settle in. Ryan sat on the floor and tried to remember how to breathe. His heart hammered against his ribs. In 7 minutes, he'd see his son for the first time in over 3 weeks. 3 weeks that in infant time was an eternity. Would Owen know him? Would he cry? Would he reach for Ryan or turn away? The door opened. Claire walked in carrying Owen, and Ryan felt his entire world tilt. His son was bigger, noticeably bigger. His face had filled out, lost that newborn scrunch. His eyes tracked movement now, alert and aware. He looked healthy, thriving. Nothing like the sick baby Ryan had last seen in hospital monitors. Claire's face was a mask. She handed Owen to Sandra without looking at Ryan, turned and walked out. Mom will be back at 4, Sandra said to Owen in that bright voice adults used with babies. You're going to spend the day with your dad. Ryan reached out, heart in his throat, as Sandra carefully transferred Owen into his arms. Hey, buddy, he whispered. It's Daddy. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Owen stared at him with solemn, dark blue eyes. Then his little face scrunched up and he started to cry. That's normal, Sandra said quickly, making notes on her clipboard. Stranger anxiety starts around this age. Just hold him gently, talk to him softly. He'll settle. Ryan bounced Owen gently the way he vaguely remembered from those first weeks after birth. The baby kept crying, not the desperate wail of a sick infant, but the insistent fussiness of one who wanted his mother and couldn't understand why she wasn't there. It took 20 minutes for Owen to calm down. By then, Ryan's shirt was soaked with tears and drool, and he felt like he'd run a marathon. But Owen was breathing evenly now, looking around the room with cautious interest. That's better, Sandra made more notes. Good job staying calm. Why don't you try some tummy time with him? The visit passed in a blur. Ryan tried to remember all the things Claire used to do. Tummy time. Reading board books in exaggerated voices. Singing songs he half remembered from his own childhood. Playing peekaboo, which made Owen laugh. And that laugh hit Ryan like a physical thing. Beautiful and heartbreaking all at once. Sandra's notes were constant. Father appears attentive, maintains appropriate boundaries, responds to infant cues, engages in age-appropriate play. Child seems comfortable after initial distress. At 4 p.m., Claire returned. This time Ryan tried to catch her eye, but she looked through him like he was glass. Took Owen from Sandra with whispered thanks and left without a word. How did it go? Diane asked when Ryan called her from the parking lot. Good, I think. He cried at first, but then he was okay. We played, I read him books. Sandra seemed satisfied. Excellent. Keep doing exactly that. Show up early, engage fully, follow all Sandra's directions. We need her reports to be glowing. Ryan drove back to Boston feeling emptier than he had in weeks. 6 hours with his son after 3 weeks apart. 6 hours supervised, documented, reduced to bullet points in Sandra's notes. This was his life now. This was what he'd reduced his family to. But at least it was something. At least he'd held Owen. At least his son had stopped crying and laughed at his silly faces. It was a foundation. He could build on a foundation. He didn't know that the foundation was already crumbling beneath his feet. Week 2, 3, 4. Ryan showed up early every Saturday, brought age-appropriate toys, learned Owen's schedule and preferences. The baby liked to be bounced, not rocked, preferred his bottle slightly warm, got fussy around 2 p.m. unless he had a nap. Ryan learned all of this, cataloged it, became fluent in his son's needs in a way he'd never bothered to before. Sandra's notes reflected his improvement. Father is punctual and prepared, demonstrates knowledge of child's schedule. Child appears comfortable and happy during visits. Relationship is developing appropriately. Then came week 5. Ryan noticed something was off immediately. Owen was fussy when Claire dropped him off, crying harder than usual. She handed him over with that same blank expression, but Ryan thought he saw something flicker in her eyes. Concern or satisfaction? Owen cried through the first hour. Nothing Ryan did helped. He tried the bouncing Owen liked, tried different toys, tried singing the songs that usually worked. The baby just kept crying, his little face red with distress. Maybe he's hungry, Sandra suggested, checking her notes. Mom said he had a bottle at 8, but it's almost 11 now. Ryan prepared a bottle from the pre-made formula Claire had packed in the diaper bag. 4 ounces, warmed in the bottle warmer the center provided. Owen took it but seemed dissatisfied, drinking only 2 ounces before pushing it away and crying again. Did he take his morning nap? Ryan asked Sandra. She checked her notes. Mom said he slept from 9 to 10, so he shouldn't be tired yet. The crying continued. By the time Claire came to pick up Owen at 4, Ryan was exhausted and worried. Sandra pulled Claire aside for a quick conversation that Ryan couldn't hear. He saw Claire nod, saw her concerned expression as she took Owen. That night, Ryan got a call from Diane. We have a problem. Sandra noted that Owen was excessively fussy during today's visit and didn't finish his bottle. Nothing alarming yet, but it's creating a pattern in the documentation. A pattern? You've had 4 good visits. Today was difficult. If the next few visits follow the same pattern, it starts to look like Owen is unsettled in your care. Do you see the problem? Ryan saw it. He saw it very clearly, but I didn't do anything wrong. He was fussy when Claire dropped him off. Doesn't matter. What matters is what Sandra documents. Diane paused. Mr. Bennett, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Are you doing anything during these visits that might upset Owen? Anything at all? No, I swear I follow his schedule. I do everything Sandra suggests. I don't know why he was so upset today. Okay, just keep doing what you're doing. Hopefully it was just a bad day. But it wasn't just a bad day. Week 6, Owen was fussy again. Week 7, even worse. By week 8, Sandra noted that the child frequently cries during visits and doesn't seem to settle easily with father. Ryan was at a loss. He was doing everything right, everything. But Owen kept crying during the visits and being fine when Claire picked him up. It made Ryan look incompetent, like he couldn't soothe his own son. He didn't know what Claire knew. Didn't know that on Diane Caraway's advice, carefully calibrated and plausibly deniable, he was being set up. The formula in Owen's bottles during visitation days contained slightly less than the recommended amount. Not so little that it would harm the baby, not so little that anyone checking would notice. Just enough that Owen would be a little bit hungry, a little bit uncomfortable, a little bit more likely to cry and be unsettled. The changes were so subtle that even Sandra didn't catch them. She just noted that Owen was frequently distressed during father's visits, that father seemed to have difficulty soothing the child, that the child always calmed down quickly once returned to mother. Each note was another brick in the wall Diane was building, a wall that would make Ryan look incompetent, would justify supervised visits continuing, would give them ammunition at the full custody trial. And Ryan, trying so hard to be a good father, had no idea he was being sabotaged by his own lawyer's advice, while Claire documented everything from her side. The trap was closing, and Ryan wouldn't realize he was caught until it was far too late. Week 9 brought Ryan's worst visit yet. Owen screamed the entire 6 hours, inconsolable despite everything Ryan tried. Sandra's notes were damning. Child exhibits severe distress in father's presence, unable to soothe infant despite multiple attempts. Ryan didn't know the formula in Owen's bottles contained slightly less than recommended. Not enough to harm him, just enough to leave him uncomfortable and fussy. Diane's strategy, executed through carefully worded suggestions, was working perfectly. Then came the CPS investigation. Sarah Williams appeared at Ryan's door on a Tuesday morning. Mr. Bennett, we received a report about Owen's care during visitation. Ryan's stomach dropped. What report? Allegations that his basic needs aren't being met, that he's frequently distressed and hungry. The investigation found nothing wrong with Ryan's apartment or his supplies. But Sarah had Dr. Patel's notes about dehydration, had Sandra's documentation of Owen's crying, had a pattern that looked concerning on paper. I'm not finding intentional neglect, Sarah concluded, but the pattern of distress is troubling. Diane was pleased when Ryan called her. This proves Claire's engaging in parental alienation. filing false reports to make you look bad. But it didn't feel false. Owen really did cry during visits, really was fussy. What if Ryan genuinely was a bad father? The real betrayal came at the next court hearing. Your Honor, Diane stood with a document. I'd like to submit Mrs. Bennett's private journal. Virginia shot up. How did you obtain that? Provided by a concerned party. Claire's face went white. She looked at Thomas Morrison in the gallery. He wouldn't meet her eyes. Judge Matthews read aloud. Sometimes I fantasize about disappearing, taking him somewhere Ryan could never find us. Canada, maybe? Europe. The words hung in the courtroom like poison. Based on documented flight risk, the judge said, I'm ordering GPS monitoring for Mrs. Bennett. Passport surrendered. No leaving Maine without court permission. Outside, Claire confronted Thomas. How could you? I'm sorry. He was crying. Margaret's dying. The treatment cost $10,000 a month. Ryan offered $75,000. I thought. The slap echoed across the parking lot. That night, Ryan sat in his apartment thinking about the journal entry, about Claire lying awake terrified of losing Owen. She hadn't actually planned to flee. She'd written that she wouldn't, but the fear had been real enough to need processing, and now that fear was being used against her. His phone buzzed. Amber, I saw the news. If you need to talk, I'm here. Ryan stared at the text, then he blocked the number. In Kennebunkport, Claire sat wearing her ankle monitor, feeling it chafe like a shackle. She'd tried to do everything right, filed properly, hadn't tried to keep Owen from Ryan, just wanted him safe. And for her trouble, she'd been betrayed and marked like a criminal. If this was how the system worked, maybe she needed to play the game better. Week 10 brought Ryan's first overnight visit. Claire had to hand Owen over for 48 hours, her hands trembling as she packed his bag. The call came at 2:47 a.m. Claire, I need help. Owen won't stop crying. His temperature is 102. When did it start? I don't know, after dinner. That was 8 hours ago. Take him to the ER. I'm coming. She drove to Boston Memorial wearing her ankle monitor, not caring about restrictions. Found Ryan in the waiting room looking terrified, and sitting nearby, scrolling her phone, was Amber Sinclair. You brought her? Claire's voice was ice. She was just, we weren't. Claire took Owen from Ryan's arms. Get away from my son. Derbuster Chen's assessment was gentle but firm. Dad, you need to know his medical history, not have it written down. Know it. Outside, as the sun rose, Ryan broke down completely. I don't know what I'm doing. Wanting isn't enough, Claire said. You have to do it. Ryan was crying. Diane told me if I looked like the committed father, I'd win. I did everything for optics, but last night, I realized I don't deserve him. You're right, Claire said quietly, but he deserves a father who tries. 3 days later, Virginia called. Ryan's dropping his overnight petition. He's offering you primary custody, supervised visits building to unsupervised, $5,000 monthly child support. What's the catch? No spousal support, and you can't relocate without his consent. Claire thought about the ankle monitor, the trial coming, the endless fighting. I accept. The war was over. Not won, not lost, just over. 6 months passed like water finding its level. Spring came to Kennebunkport with gentle warmth. Claire stood in her kitchen frosting a whale-shaped cake. Owen was turning 1 tomorrow. 1 year since that terrible night. 1 year since her world exploded and reformed. Her cottage was small but hers. She'd gone back to work at the hospital part-time. She was dating James, a high school English teacher who was kind and patient, taking it slow. But it was nice to feel wanted again. Ryan arrived early at 9 instead of 9:30, punctual now. He looked different, hair longer, wearing jeans instead of designer suits. He'd moved to a small apartment, took a job at a smaller firm for 60% less money. The gloss had worn off, revealing someone more human. Can I help? He asked. Claire gestured to folding chairs. Those need to go to the park. They worked in companionable silence. When Owen woke up crying, Claire brought him out. Da-da! Owen reached for Ryan immediately. Ryan took him, eyes wet. Hey, buddy, happy birthday. The park was decorated with blue and white balloons. Claire's parents were there, civil to Ryan but cool. Jessica helped with food, still shooting Ryan occasional glares. James arrived, easy with people, in a way Ryan never was. Owen smashed his cake laughing. They sang happy birthday, took photos. Claire watched Ryan playing with Owen, building block towers that Owen knocked over with delighted shrieks. The transformation was real. Ryan knew Owen's schedule now, his preferences, his personality. He wasn't the father he'd been, but he was becoming the father Owen needed. After the party, Ryan brought Owen back to Claire. Good party, thanks for including me. He's your son too. Ryan hesitated. Claire, do you think someday you'll be able to forgive me? Claire looked at Owen, then at Ryan. I forgive you for the affair. People make mistakes. I even forgive you for that night. But I'll never forget that you used our son as a weapon. That's not something you forgive. That's something you learn to live with. Ryan nodded. That's fair. But, Claire continued, I'm grateful you stopped pretending. I'm grateful you're trying. That has to count for something. It counts for everything, Ryan whispered. Later, Claire stood with James watching Ryan drive away. The sun set over the ocean in oranges and pinks. You okay? James asked. Yeah, Claire said. I think I am. That night after Owen was asleep and James had gone home, Claire thought about everything that brought her here. The betrayal, the fear, the fighting, the rebuilding. She'd survived. She had her son, her work, her cottage by the sea. She had James. She'd lost her marriage but found herself. Her phone buzzed. Ryan, thank you for today. Claire typed back. You're his father. He needs you. Just keep being the dad you've become. Ryan, I will. I promise. This time she believed him. She walked to Owen's room, watched him sleep. Soon he'd be in preschool, then kindergarten, then growing up. But for now, he was still hers. People would ask someday if she forgave Ryan. The truth was, forgiveness wasn't an event. It was a choice she made every day. Some days she forgave him. Some days she didn't. But every day she chose to let Owen have a father. And maybe that was enough. She climbed into bed and, for the first time in 2 years, fell asleep without checking locks or her phone. Without constant anxiety, she was safe. Owen was safe. And maybe that was the only happy ending that mattered. Fall arrived with theatrical display, trees exploding into gold and crimson. Owen was 15 months old, walking confidently, learning new words daily. His personality emerged, stubborn, joyful, endlessly curious. Claire sat outside the Family Connection Center, watching Ryan play with Owen. Supervised visits had ended 2 months ago after Ryan completed his program. Now he had unsupervised visits twice weekly, 4 hours each. She didn't have to watch anymore, but some part of her still needed to verify Owen was safe. Through the window, Ryan built block towers patiently. When Owen knocked them down, Ryan laughed and rebuilt. No frustration, no phone checking, just presence. Virginia Reeves appeared at her car window. Stalking your ex? Claire rolled down the window, making sure Owen's okay. He's fine. Ryan's doing well. Virginia paused. Can we talk? They walked to a bench overlooking the ocean. I wanted to check how you're really doing, Virginia said. Not the brave face, the truth. Claire watched the waves. I'm angry, still, all the time, at Ryan, at Thomas, at myself for not seeing it sooner. You were being a good wife. That doesn't make his choices your fault. I keep wondering if I'd been different. More like Amber. Stop, Virginia interrupted. You just had a baby. You were exhausted because you were parenting alone. None of that justified what Ryan did. I know intellectually, but emotionally, you're human. That's going to hurt a long time. But you survived. You protected your son. That takes incredible strength. Inside, Ryan noticed Claire's car still there. He understood. She was vigilant. Wouldn't let Owen slip through cracks the way Ryan had let everything slip away. Owen played with a toy truck. Da-da! Watch! I'm watching, buddy. The presents came easier now. Ryan had learned through therapy that he'd been emotionally absent long before that night at the Liberty Hotel. He'd been chasing success like it could fill emptiness inside him. His therapist had been blunt. You treated your family like boxes to check. Wife, check. Baby, check. House, check. But you never engaged with them as people. Now he was learning. Every visit was practice being fully present. Not thinking about work. not planning next moves, just being with his son. After the visit, Ryan carried Owen to Claire's car. Good visit. He's getting so fast. Claire took Owen. Ryan noticed the baby reached for both parents now. No more crying during transitions. Ryan, Claire said, can we talk? Come to the cottage Saturday afternoon. Ryan's heart raced. What time? 2, and bring your therapist's latest report. Saturday, Ryan drove to Kennebunkport, rehearsing conversations. The cottage looked different in autumn light. Claire made tea. They sat at her kitchen table. I need to say some things. For me. Just listen. Ryan nodded. That night at the hospital, something inside me broke. My sense that the world was safe, that people who promised to love you would be there. Ryan felt tears building. Then I found the texts, realized you weren't just cheating, you were building a case to destroy me. I had to accept the man I married was capable of that cruelty. Her hands shook around her cup. I hated you. God, Ryan, I hated you so much. I've fantasized about you disappearing. I understand, Ryan whispered. But watching you with Owen these months, I saw real change. Not performative. Actually trying. Claire met his eyes. I don't have to forgive you, but I can acknowledge who you're becoming. I can let go of hate because holding it was destroying me. Are you forgiving me? No, I'm choosing not to let what you did define my life. I'm choosing peace over justice, but forgiveness? Maybe never. I understand. I just hope Owen can be proud of the father I became. Claire read his evaluation. This is good. Let's talk about expanding your time with Owen. Maybe overnight visits again? Slowly. They talked for an hour, negotiating boundaries, setting terms, honest in ways they hadn't been in years. As Ryan left, Claire stopped him. Thank you for doing the work. Owen deserves that. I wish you'd figured it out before everything fell apart, but at least you did eventually. Ryan drove home crying. Not despair, relief. He'd never have Claire back, but he might have something better, a real relationship with his son. And maybe that was enough. 1 year later, Owen's second birthday party was bigger, held at a Kennebunkport park. Ocean animal themed because his whale obsession had expanded. He could name them all, make their sounds with impressive accuracy. Ryan arrived on time, relaxed. He'd been promoted at his firm, not to old heights, but steady work that let him leave by 5 p.m. He'd kept up therapy after court requirements ended, kept showing up. Owen ran to him. Dada, look, fish. Ryan scooped him up. That's so cool. Is that Nemo? Yes, Nemo. Claire watched from the picnic table with James. Her parents were there, warmer to Ryan now. Jessica brought her boyfriend. The gathering was multi-generational, blended, complicated. A family that didn't look like family, but functioned like one. James squeezed her hand. You okay? Yeah, I really am. She meant it. The past year brought healing. Therapy helped. Time helped. Watching Ryan be a good father helped most. Ryan approached. Need help? Drinks need unpacking. Birthday candles are in my car. They work together. Not friends, not enemies. Allies united by love for Owen. The party was joyful chaos. Kids ran screaming. Parents chatted. Owen opened presents, more interested in wrapping paper than toys. Happy birthday to you, Fishonen, everyone sang. Owen clapped. Cake! Cake! Make a wish, buddy. Ryan lifted him to the candles. Owen just blew hard, sending spit everywhere. The crowd cheered. Claire caught Ryan's eye. They shared a real smile, acknowledging the absurdity and joy and profound relief that they'd made it here. Later, after guests left and sun was setting, Ryan helped Claire pack up. Owen played with James on swings. He's good with him, Ryan said, nodding toward James. James is wonderful, patient, kind. I'm glad Owen has that. Ryan paused. Can I ask something? Sure. Are you happy? Claire thought about her cottage, her job, her relationship, the life she'd built from ruins. I'm getting there. Some days are harder. But yeah, I think I'm happy. Good, you deserve to be. So do you. I'm working on it. Turns out happiness is harder than success. Can't just throw money at it. They finished packing. Then Ryan said, I think about that night sometimes. Wonder what would have happened if I'd answered your call. We'd probably still be married, still be miserable, Maybe we needed to fall apart to become who we're supposed to be. Maybe, but I wish it hadn't hurt you so much. Me too, but we can't change it. Only move forward. Ryan called Owen over. Say goodbye to Daddy. Bye, Dada. Love you. Love you too, little man. So much. Claire watched Ryan walk to his car, watched him wipe his eyes before getting in. He'd never have her back, but he had what mattered, a real relationship with his son. James walked over with Owen on his shoulders. Ready to head home? Yeah, let's go. They walked to the car together, this strange little family. Not what Claire planned, not the life she'd imagined, but it was real. It was hers. It was enough. That night, after Owen was asleep and James had gone home, Claire sat by her open window listening to the ocean. Her phone buzzed. Ryan, thank you for today. Claire typed back, you're his father. He needs you. Just keep being the dad you have become. Ryan, I will. I promise. This time, she believed him. She walked to Owen's room, watched him sleep. Soon he'd be in preschool, then growing up in a way. But for now, he was still hers. People would ask someday if she forgave him. The truth, forgiveness isn't an event. It's a choice you make every day. Some days she forgave him, some days she didn't. But every day, she chose to let Owen have a father. And maybe that was enough. Claire climbed into bed and fell asleep without checking locks or her phone, without constant anxiety. She was safe. Owen was safe. And that was the only happy ending that mattered.